Hi everyone. My presentation today will focus on how I've planned and delivered a Year 8 English lesson on narratives, directly addressing the requirements of the quality teaching model. In preparing these slides, I have drawn on my lesson plan and the key principles of middle years pedagogy to ensure that every element, strategy, and choice is well justified. I will be describing the strategies, two for each of the three main QTM dimensions: intellectual quality, quality learning environment, and significance. Each slide includes clear evidence from my lesson activities, and the verbal justification explains why these approaches are effective for adolescent learners at this stage. So, in this first part of the presentation, I'm focusing on the intellectual quality dimension, specifically the element of metalanguage. For my Year 8 English class on narratives, establishing a strong foundation in literary terms was critical. That is why I decided to start the lesson with a group activity called Unscramble the Terms. Students work together here to reconstruct the words protagonist, antagonist, sidekick, and mentor using colored word cards arranged in randomized groups. This task comes directly from the lesson plan's introduction phase, where students are immediately immersed in subject specific terminology through collaboration. The strategy implemented here leverages cooperative group learning paired with gamification. Cooperative learning provides an interactive social environment where learners collaborate to deepen understanding. Gamification, through the fun, tactile nature of the letter scramble, creates motivation and enhances cognitive engagement of students. This multimodal approach supports diverse learning preferences. Visual learners engage with physical cards, and auditory learners through discussion, and social learners through group work. This practice addresses multiple learner needs, enabling all students, including those less confident, to participate meaningfully in the lesson. Through working towards a common goal, students build trust and confidence in the classroom community. The lesson plan's design of a follow-up class discussion gives a space for immediate formative feedback, ensuring misconceptions are addressed and learning is scaffolded effectively. This activity exemplifies how abstract terms can be introduced in a tangible and memorable way while fostering an inclusive classroom culture where every voice is valued. Such a foundation in metalanguage sets up students for deeper analytical work, perfectly aligning with the intellectual quality dimension as outlined in the quality teaching model. Here, as you can see the excerpt taken from my lesson plan, the lesson then transitions to a guided group activity where students categorize printed images of pop culture characters, sorting each into categories like protagonist, antagonist, sidekick, or mentor. The focus remains on the intellectual quality dimension, and the elements of metalanguage and higher order thinking are incorporated here. But now, the strategy is grounded in contextual application and authentic engagement along with visuals. In my lesson, this can be considered as a moment where students are challenged not merely to recall terms, but to use them actively in discussions about characters familiar to them. This facilitates practical application, which is essential for mastering academic language. The strategy draws upon visual representations and examples from popular media, ensuring that students' prior knowledge and interests are integral to the learning process. For many adolescents, connecting new learning to personal interests is vital for sustained motivation and engagement. Small group discussions encourage students to explain and justify their categorizations in verbalizing and negotiating meaning. Students practice meta-language fluency while cultivating higher order thinking, critical analysis, and respectful classroom discourse. The subsequent class discussion reinforces peer-to-peer learning and collective sense-making, allowing misunderstandings to be clarified collaboratively. This approach supports diverse learners, including those with English as an additional language or dialect (EALD learners), and students with learning variations. Visual supports scaffold comprehension, while oral reading and discussion opportunities accommodate varied linguistic strengths. Within the lesson plan, I highlight the value of mixed ability grouping for peer scaffolding and oral practice as integral to inclusivity. By weaving academic language development with culturally responsive pedagogy, I actively implement the principles of the quality teaching model, creating a rich foundation for further narrative study and academic growth of students. Moving to the quality learning environment dimension, which is the second dimension I'm talking here, I first address the element of engagement. The lesson begins with students assigned to groups randomly, purposefully creating an unfamiliar yet safe social context to disrupt habitual social cliques and encourage wider peer interaction. This strategy of random grouping helps students build new relationships, enhancing social skills essential for adolescent success. The gamified word scramble challenge operates as more than an icebreaker. It is carefully designed to spark curiosity and participation among students. According to the lesson plan, this phase aims to engage students immediately in a cognitively stimulating task situated within a supportive competitive framework. Adolescents particularly respond well to learning experiences that are interactive, social, and infused with a sense of play, according to the research. During this activity, I circulate around the room, offering hints and positive verbal encouragement for students while they are doing the activity. This immediate feedback promotes perseverance, celebrates effort, and builds confidence among students, further fostering a positive classroom climate. These small yet consistent teacher student interactions cultivate trust, making the learning environment emotionally safe for students to take intellectual risks and voice ideas, according to my opinion. The broader learning environment thus prioritizes engagement from the outset, nurturing student motivation, active participation, and social emotional well being. Students leave the activity energized and more likely to sustain focus through subsequent lesson components. This approach shows how quality learning environment practices play a vital role in middle years education, balancing cognitive challenge with emotional support. Continuing to nurture engagement, the lesson closes with a meaningful opportunity for student reflection using exit cards. This reflective writing task invites each student to consider what new vocabulary they have learned in today's lesson, which character types they prefer, for example, protagonists or antagonists, and to justify their preferences. The lesson plan here articulates this as mentioned in the annotated picture. This strategy creates a low-risk, individualized, reflective space for learners, allowing quieter or less confident students to actively contribute to their learning narrative. Through metacognitive engagement, students develop self-awareness about their learning processes, facilitating greater future autonomy and responsibility. The collected data provides formative insights about student understanding and prevailing misconceptions, allowing me to tailor follow-up teaching effectively. Reflection also deepens personal connection to the content, reinforcing ongoing motivation and self-direction essential in adolescent learning. Such a reflective closure ensures that engagement is not superficial but becomes embedded as a continuous self regulated learning dimension within the curriculum, complementing the interactive group work. So, the strategy that I have used here is individual reflection through exit cards for formative assessment. And the QTM element that I talked here was about engagement, encouraging student voice within these activities. Moving on, in the dimension of significance, I foregrounded students' background knowledge through a collaborative categorization task linking narrative roles with well known characters from popular culture, such as movies, televisions, and books. This approach purposefully connects academic content with students' lived experiences and cultural contexts, which activates knowledge schemas. Moreover, this strategy is highly inclusive. I believe that it respects the rich and diverse experiences students bring to the classroom, whether through culture, language, or personal interests. As you can see in the lesson plan here, students have to collaborate and negotiate meaning together, encouraging peer learning and respectful discussion. So, by framing learning within familiar cultural narratives, students will be able to find meaning in abstract concepts through accessible examples. This connection respects and validates diverse cultural identities, which supports motivation and participation. Collaborative group work encourages negotiation, critical discussion, and peer learning, and also vital components of social constructivist pedagogy and essential to adolescent cognitive development. According to the research, I have learned that this activity models how culturally responsive teaching embraces and celebrates diversity while challenging students to deepen their understanding through multiple perspectives. So, this method aligns seamlessly within the quality teaching model's significance dimension, which values teaching that is relevant, inclusive, and connected to students' identities. The strategy that I focused on here was building on students' existing knowledge schemas to make lesson content relevant, promoting peer collaboration to share their perspectives. And the QTM element was about background knowledge by connecting new learning to the student's prior knowledge. In this slide, the final instructional strategy in the dimension of significance is a wildcard activity, fostering critical thinking, flexibility, and sophisticated application of metalanguage. Each group receives an ambiguous character card and must reason collaboratively about the character's fitting narrative role or roles, considering how roles may shift depending on context or interpretation. So, by asking students to justify their choices and engage in the discussion, this strategy enhances critical thinking and real world problem solving skills of students. It allows learners to recognize that texts and also the characters that we learned in today's lesson are open to interpretation and that their perspective can be both challenged and enriched by others. The social nature of this activity builds classroom dialogue and encourages a diversity of viewpoints or perspectives, which is a hallmark of effective middle years pedagogy. Moreover, This discussion invites complex cognitive operations such as synthesis, evaluation, and argumentation, encouraging students to apply their meta understanding. It advances substantive communication skills through sustained verbal reasoning. Meanwhile, teacher facilitation supports respectful discourse and ensures that all students' voices contribute meaningfully, creative, um, inclusive participation, and constructive formative feedback. The dialogic nature of this activity mirrors real world interpretive complexity, underscoring that meaning is constructed and negotiable. By ending the lesson with a classroom discussion, I believe that learning is more complex, collaborative, and also more ongoing, which are the principles at the core of both the QTM and the best practices in middle years education, according to the research that I have referred to. So, thank you for following my justification on the dimensions, elements, and strategies I selected for this lesson, all firmly grounded in both the QTM framework and responsive middle years teaching practice. By aligning each strategy with the relevant dimension and element and connecting my decisions to lesson plan evidence, I have aimed here to create a lesson that is really inclusive and meaningful for all students. So, after my justification, these are some additional slides which include the responses for learning tasks from weeks 1 to week 3. These are the answers for Module 1, Preparation for Week 1 Pedagogy and the Quality Teaching Model. These are my answers for Module 2A in Week 2 based on preparation and planning to teach aligning the elements. Next is based on Module 2B in Week 3 based on the topic Strengthening a Pedagogy through Peer Observation and Feedback. This is the reference list that I used for justification and for my weekly responses. Thank you very much for listening and for your valuable time.